Brandon. We're back.
Absolutely.
It's been too long, man.
It is June 28th, 2024. And I believe our first episode was in the fall of 2022 or 21. So it's been a damn minute.
It has been a very long time. We have so much in which we have not talked about. So we will try to, I would say, recuperate from what we've lost. We are going to try to establish what we lost. Okay. We are now primarily focused on college football and college football only. That is going forward. That is what we're going to be. That's what we started out with. That's what worked the best. It's what we're both probably the most passionate about equally. It is a lovely sport, and we cannot wait to cover it.
Speaking of college football, we are, after today, and for a select few who may have gotten the earlier version of college football at 25, but the college football video game is coming back after 11 years.
Yes, it is.
Unbelievable.
This is fantastic.
It's a great time. It's going to be a great summer. I'm excited for some college football here in a couple months. We have some great opening games, but today we are talking just a couple conferences and some new teams that have joined these conferences.
Yes,
a little bit of intrigue.
I believe today we're discussing the Big Ten and the Big 12.
Absolutely.
Those will be the first two things we touch on, and then to round out the episode, we will actually be going back to the college football video game. We will be discussing the top 10 stadiums according to EACFB 25, which is just beautiful to say.
It's a great time of year.
It's a great time to be here. So, you know what? Let's get right into it. Start out with the Big Ten here. Now, the Big Ten has added 4 teams this year. Very quick transition. Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC. Brandon, how are you feeling about these new additions?
I mean, you're bringing the brand new shiny diamond from the West Coast to a group of blue-collar roughneck teams where it's nothing but defense and run the football as much as they possibly can. Some other teams may be passing the ball more nowadays, but you get what I'm saying. The Big Ten football is all about nitty-gritty, low-scoring games. Shout out to our friend Alec. His Iowa team kind of sets defensive standards for the Big Ten. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the contrast and play styles from these 4 teams to what we see every year from the Big Ten. I think my biggest question mark for the teams that are joining, just from what I've seen offensively, will probably be Washington, just because of how much they have thrown the ball over the past couple of years, especially with Michael Penix. Another team I'm going to throw out there will be Oregon. They just brought in Dylan Gabriel. He's more of your air raid type quarterback, but he can also run. But they also have great running backs in Oregon. Just a little hot take. I'm probably going to be taking Oregon to win the Big Ten just because of that, because they have so many returning offensive weapons and they have Dylan Gabriel coming in, the transfer from Oklahoma.
I completely agree. I think the only team that will transition well to the Big Ten this year will be Oregon. I think Oregon is the only team that's set up for success with how strong and potent their offensive and defensive lines are. That's what you need to be successful in the Big Ten. Oregon is set up fantastically in those 2 departments. Washington, if it would have been last year, Washington, I would have been no problem with the transition to the Big Ten. But losing Penix.
And also DeBoer, by the way.
Losing DeBoer, transfers out, not bringing as much talent in. Washington will be okay. I think they'll have a winning record. I don't think they'll be really in any contention. UCLA is a hot mess. Fired Chip Kelly. In my opinion, I really don't know why. I think he was doing fine at UCLA for what they are. And then USC, their offense is going to be worse than last year. Their defense will be better, but their defense wasn't even a top 100 defense last year. So will they be better defensively? Yes. New defensive coordinator. Cool. They're still going to be terrible, though.
Let me just say from the USC standpoint, depending on how they come out game 1 of this year, will kind of determine the rest of their season. Because I believe their first game is against LSU.
Wouldn't surprise me. It'd be a good game. It'd be a good game, but I think Brian Kelly would go into that game trying to prove something because you could argue he's been lackluster at LSU despite making an SEC championship game. But I mean, I just think their offense is going to be worse this year than last year. I think
I
their
don't even know who
defense.
their quarterback is for USC.
I remembered. I forgot. I'll have to look it up. But their defense is still going to be terrible.
Yeah.
And they might make it to Big Ten play at 2-2, and then they'll get walloped by just the sheer strength and defense of the Big Ten. It's a tough thing to make that drastic of a transition in terms of play styles, because like you said, the West Coast very much offensive oriented, air it out, just high paced football.
No,
The Big
I
Ten
completely
is
agree.
slow, grit and grind, hard hits, offensive line or line of scrimmage play, and it's not easy to make that transition. And the only team that is set up for it, in my opinion, is Oregon.
I completely agree. And let me just say, outside of so we've talked about the new teams that are coming into the Big Ten. Now let's just kind of transition into who we have actually coming out of the Big Ten. What teams do we see as sleepers? What teams do we think are going to have a big drop off, maybe a little drop off, or what are going to be some teams that have always kind of been right there at that mid level but can never get over the top? Which I'm going to say this just because you are a Penn State fan. And I guess we'll go right into it. Is this the year Drew Aller, under a new OC, gets things going for Penn State? Is this the year where Penn State can put themselves into the Big Ten championship game? Me personally, I can already see them being in the college football playoff, but I would like to see them get over that hump.
I agree. I think with the expanded playoff, I don't want to say Penn State's a lock, but I think they'll at least have 10 wins this year, and I think having 10 wins in the Big Ten, this Big Ten, will probably be a lock for a top 12 position. I do really believe Penn State's offense will be better than last year. Now, will it take the jump needed to be in a Big Ten championship or win a Big Ten championship? I can't confidently say yes. But I do think if with an improved offensive line and better play calling for the running backs like Nick Singletary, and we just have a plethora of really good running backs behind him as well. I really believe they can run a consistent offense and not have to put so much pressure on Drew Aller. Now, last year it was his first year starting. Against really good teams, he struggled. Against bad teams, he was fine. I think the issue was inconsistent play calling against good teams versus bad teams, where against, let's say, like a Rutgers, we would air it out a lot more frequently, and it would make him more comfortable. And then against Ohio State, you would run it for 2 plays and then force him to a 3rd and 8 almost every drive. And at that, it just doesn't – you can't do that to a young quarterback and expect it to work. At least not with every young quarterback. There are some exceptions, of course. But I do think Penn State's offense will be improved. I do think the new OC is a very good pickup. I do think they will go 10-2, 11-1. I still think they are a step behind Ohio State.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Penn State has always been that team where they'll have great starts this season. They'll be undefeated, and all of a sudden you get their big first Big Ten opponent, and then they just kind of shit the bed. I mean that's pretty much what happened in the past couple of years. Not saying they're a bad team. I just think there's something they're missing to get over that hump. I don't know what it is. I know you watch them a lot more, but moving on to now let's talk into Michigan, just coming off a national championship. Are we going to see a huge drop off? From what I'm hearing, they've pretty much brought their entire defense back. Only thing missing, pretty much, Blake Corum, JJ McCarthy, Roman Wilson on the outside. I don't know what their offensive weapon. I know they still have Donovan Edwards. He's back. He's obviously on the cover of College Football at 25. But as far as offensively, I don't know how they'll be, but I think they'll still be a very, very high top favorite to win the Big Ten just because of their defense still.
I think they are guaranteed to be a top 5 team in the Big Ten. I do think there's a drop off. I mean, losing Harbaugh, I do think the new head coach, he was interim when Harbaugh didn't coach this past season for a couple games. Clearly, the team's behind him. Clearly, they like him, and I think he knows what he's doing. So I think they'll still be fine. I still think they'll win 9 or 10 games. I do think they take a step back though, offensively. I mean, yeah, you have Donovan Edwards, but one guy can't carry an offense, and I'm not as sure about the other weapons they have. Obviously, the defense is fantastic. Um, but when you throw in an extra team like Oregon joining the Big Ten, and now Ohio State is poised to have a ridiculously good season. You have Penn State, who I think will take a jump this year. You're bumping Michigan down to that 4th spot, or maybe and maybe someone comes out of nowhere. Maybe this is a big if, but Iowa's defense is this is somehow the most veteran defense they've ever had. This is the oldest by age defense they've ever had. So their defense is going to be as experienced as it's ever been, and they've at least attempted to rehaul that offense. So maybe if it takes a 5-point jump in offensive production, that Iowa team could be back to 10 or 11 wins.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I really do give a lot of credit for the interim coach at Michigan when he took over. He did a great job. I mean, with all the turmoil that was going on with Michigan stealing signs, they still won ball games, big moments, ended up winning the national championship. So kudos to him. I think he'll do well there. So I mean, after going through Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, I'm just going to kind of rattle off my little pieces here. So I'm actually going to take Michigan to win the Big Ten this year. That's going to be my pick for right now.
You go 4 in a row for Michigan.
That's what I'm thinking. My sleeper team I'm going to pick is Wisconsin.
I like that.
I think the team that
coach.
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember.
I forget their name. It's the guy who's at Cincinnati.
Fickle?
Yeah, Fickle.
And then I think that we've already talked about it. I think the team that's been at that mid-tier level that I can see making a jump is Penn State. I really think this could be a year where Drew Aller shows why he was such a highly touted, recruited quarterback out of high school. I mean, the dude's what, 6'3"?
6'3", 6'4".
I mean, he's a big kid. He's got a big arm. Offensive line didn't do much to help him out this year. I'm hoping he kind of has some chemistry with them for this year. I think he's going to do well. I'm not going to lie, I almost put Penn State to win the Big Ten for my prediction. I'm just a little iffy, though, as far as the wide receiver goes and the run game. I just want to see how well their offensive line does. I want to see the progression from year 1 to year 2 for Aller. But I do think Penn State will be up there the entire year, and it's going to be an exciting season. Exciting season in the Big Ten. Oregon, I don't want to pick a new team that's coming in because I think it's going to take that year to get used to that play style for so long, all season long. I mean, these teams are used to, West Coast offense, not nitty gritty in between the tackles and linemen. And then I have one hot take for the Big Ten. If Ohio State loses to Michigan again, this is the last year Ryan Day is coaching for the Buckeyes.
I would have to agree, honestly, because in my opinion, this year Ohio State's roster is better than Michigan's roster, just top to bottom offensively. They're much better in my opinion. Defensively, I'd say Michigan's probably better, but Ohio State is close behind. So for my winner of the Big Ten, I am going Ohio State. It's the safe bet, but it's who I think will win. I think they're just hands down the best team in the Big Ten. My dark horse, my improbable team that might rise to fame this year. Nebraska. Nebraska has a easily top 25 defense going into the season. They need to figure out the quarterback situation. Chubba Purdy.
I was about to say Chuba Hubbard just got drafted a couple years ago.
Chubba Purdy is a Nebraska quarterback. He's got speed. Surprisingly, he's a fast-ass motherfucking quarterback, unlike his brother. And he brings a little bit of a dual threat role for Nebraska, which in games last year opened up and help Nebraska get a couple wins here and there. Now, Nebraska, they were not every year, pretty much. Someone or a lot of people will say, well, this is the year Nebraska should get it going. And they never do. I think this is the year they finally get back on track. I do think Matt Rule is a good head coach, and this is what, his third year? Second or third year?
I believe a second year, right?
Second year. I think this is the year Nebraska does it. And with the additional Penn State stuff we were talking about, I completely agree.
How many times when Alec has been on this show, have we just dogged Nebraska?
Oh, many times.
Just because of Scott Frost. And
Scott Frost was honestly a top 5 worst hire in the past decade.
Alec, if and when you listen to this and you watch this, please leave a comment about your interpretation or what you're thinking when you hear Kellen picking Nebraska as a dark horse, because I'm not going to lie, I actually somewhat agree with him. There's actually a shot. I think Rule is a much better coach than Frost was. I think Frost was more of so like their golden boy from back in the day, so let's bring him back and see what he can do. But they've been a laughing stock of the Big Ten for
since
the last
2014.
It's been horrible.
Ever since they fired Bo Pelini, Nebraska's been terrible.
But definitely let us know. I will let Kellen continue because he's going to talk about Penn State, but I just want to reiterate, let us know your thoughts, comments, or anything like that about who you think is going to sleeper in the Big Ten, who you have picking in the Big Ten. But let's continue, Kellen. Penn State, this is your team. This is your team. But let me ask you before you finish this. If Penn State does not go to a title game, and let's say they don't even go to the playoff, is this the last year we see Franklin as a Penn State head coach?
It depends on how far off Penn State is from the playoff. If they go 10-2 and they don't make it, you get wiggle room, I would say, because like you're still like right on that edge, and at that point, just the committee didn't choose you.
But how much wiggle room are you willing to give him the last couple of years where he's right there?
I think he should go 9-3 minimum.
Okay.
And that is strongly dependent on who he loses to. I think he can lose to Ohio State. I think he will lose to Ohio State.
Well, we definitely, like, when it comes closer to season time, we're definitely going to go game schedule and figure out records.
The main point about Penn State I wanted to make was that you brought up the wide receiver core. I completely agree. The wide receiver core is extraordinarily lackluster compared to what Penn State normally has. Historically, they have at least 2 good receivers to chuck the ball up to. They don't have really any on the level of like an Allen Robinson that they used to have. Tight end position I'm still happy about, so there's a dump-off man there, but you're not going to win a game with a tight end. So that's my biggest worry about Penn State, and that's part of the reason I don't fully know if Drew Aller will take the next step, because he has no one to throw the fucking ball to.
I agree, and I feel bad just because like when you have a talent like that, you want to make sure you have people he can throw to that you can rely on to catch the ball and get you some yardage and get you touchdowns.
Yeah.
And in the Big Ten, with how these defenses are, touchdowns are crucial, especially late in the game. Like you can't expect to win games only putting up 10 or 13 points unless you're Iowa and your defense somehow does everything for you. Alec, you're welcome. I think it's going to be a very interesting year for the Big Ten, just as far as the new teams go, especially seeing teams like Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC in there. It's still so weird to me to say that.
Yeah.
Let's move down south. Let's move into the Big 12. Some new teams that we got joining the Big 12 this year. We have Utah.
Well, this team just left. It was the only jersey. It was the only jersey I had in the closet, and I felt like I had to wear a jersey for the first episode back.
Listen, we'll cover them on Monday because we got SEC and ACC on Monday. But do you want to go ahead and let us know who's joining the Big 12 this year? That's new.
Yeah. So this year we have 2 new additions. We have Utah and Colorado. Obviously, last year they added 4 teams in Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU. The Utah edition is massive. The Colorado edition, in terms of just what the brand is right now,
and notoriety, prime time in the Big 12. It's going to be great. think Kellen's having a little bit of technical difficulties. Um, but yeah, I mean, Colorado's joining, Utah's joining after 4 teams joined last year. I mean, I am stoked to kind of see how Utah does just because of Cam Rising. He's coming back. I don't know how healthy he's going to be. You also now have primetime Coach Sanders now in the Big 12 with his son Shadur, Travis Hunter, and then his other son Shiloh, I believe, the linebacker for Colorado. But after the hot start Colorado had last year, beating TCU week 1, Travis Hunter's ridiculous diving interception. We'll get Kellen back. I think he was just dealing with some technical stuff right now, but I think it's going to be a very interesting year. I think there are some sleeper teams that really no one's talking about as far as who's going to come out on the Big 12 or out on top on the Big 12. I also want to send a congratulations from the Sharpe Sports Report about Will Venable. He just signed a 6-year extension for the Sooners, even though they've also left the Big 12, but I'm still kind of in the old school Big 12 mindset. There are some really good teams, and I can see why some people might say the Big 12 is kind of one of the weaker conferences. I would probably say the ACC is probably the weakest of the Big 4 that we have right now. And I'll probably put the Big 12 at 3. I mean, you don't have those name brand teams that you're going to see anymore in the Big 12. And just kind of how we did with the Big 10, I'm going to kind of go through my sleepers who I think is going to pull out in the Big 12. Wait. I think Kellen's coming back. I don't know. But anyways, I'll go through my sleepers, or a sleeper through the Big 12, who I think is going to win the Big 12, who also I think might have a drop off in the Big 12. And then kind of the same thing about that mid-tier team who I think will just kind of finally hit that next leg to get above everybody else. But you got Cam Rising, you got Shadur Sanders. Prime time. I mean, you're going to have Fox noon kickoff, with Joe Klatt and Gus Johnson. It's going to be great. It's going to be weird to not see, the Red River rivalry anymore between Texas and Oklahoma within the Big 12. I know there's been talks about that actually moving to 3:30 instead of noon. But as far as the Big 12 goes, the team who I am picking to come out and win the Big 12 this year, I'm going to go with the Iowa State Cyclones. I think their quarterback, I am so sorry, I cannot think of his name. I think it's Baldelli. It's that, for some reason, that seems right. I don't think it is. I like how they played last year. I think they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of young talent on the team. And I'm Alec, who has been on this show before. He is a huge Matt Campbell fan, and he's made me believe in Matt Campbell, and I really do think he is a great coach. So I will say Iowa State comes out and wins it. And I think right now, as far as betting, if you are into betting, the betting odds for Iowa State to win the Big 12, I think they're like 4th or 5th right now in the Big 12 to win the conference. As far as my sleeper team, man, it's tough. And it's weird kind of saying it, but I kind of want to go with either Kansas State or UCF as a sleeper team right now in the Big 12, even though Kansas State's pretty good. I mean, I think they're right outside the top 25. I guess in my mind, when I say sleeper team, is this a team that I think really no one's talking about, but they can just kind of come out of nowhere and do that. But I also see that with UCF. They were very good last year. I can see UCF making a run in the Big 12, and it's going to be one of those things where they start out 2 or 3 games in the season, or even 4 games at the start of the season, and everyone's talking about, it's Utah playing well, it's prime time, it's Colorado started off 4-0 again, it's Iowa State, it's Oklahoma State who's starting really well, but here's UCF starting off the season 4-0, then 5-0, then they're beating teams like Oklahoma State, and they're beating teams like Colorado. I don't know if they play. We'll dive more into the schedule, but I think UCF is a I think their offense transitions so well to the Big 12, just with how their air raid offense is. I mean, they throw the ball so much. They throw the ball so much. Um, so I think they will transition very well. As far as the team that I know I mentioned about that mid-tier level, I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I do like the running back. I do like the coach. Kellen's a huge Mike Gundy fan. But I think Oklahoma State I don't know. They've always been in the mix, but then, they'll be in the mix and they just kind of die off the last 3 or 4 games of the season. For some reason, they just lose to a team they're not supposed to. Um, I would like to see Oklahoma be more consistent with their games, like win a game that everyone knows you're supposed to win. And if everyone thinks you're going to lose, like I get it, lose, but don't lose by like 40 and 50 points. Sometimes their defense is a little shaky. Their defense for the last couple years until last year have been pretty solid. Because I remember them. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so when Notre Dame had that bowl game with Oklahoma State, Notre Dame blew it in the second half. It just kind of blew my mind. I hope Kellen can come back and talk about the Big 12, but it looks like that might not happen. But as far as the Big 12 goes, I feel like a lot of people are going to say Utah is kind of the obvious one right there, just because of Cam Rising and his return is such an important aspect to that. I'm going to butcher this tight end's name for Utah, Kautsa. I think that's how you say his last name. The weapons are still there at Utah. The defense has always been fantastic. That is one stadium I would love to attend a home game for, is the Utah Utes, just because I've heard it's an electric atmosphere. But honestly, like I really could see Utah just kind of running away with the Big 12 this year, just because of that Cam Rising aspect. And I do love their coach, and I love how their defense plays. Like they are in your face type defense. Kellen's going to try to come back in again. Hold on 1 second. There he is. He has returned. I've been talking.
Oh no! The thing is, I've been sitting here like listening.
Oh,
but for some reason it wasn't popping up for you. I don't know why. So I've just been sitting here like just like listening to everything you've been saying, trying to interject, but I guess my audio wasn't coming through or something. I don't know.
Well, anyways, Kellen's back. Did you hear my picks?
Yes, I did. I heard Iowa State. I heard UCF, Kansas State as dark horses.
Who's the quarterback for Iowa State? Is his last name Baldelli?
It's some weird Italian thing.
Anyways, he's a good quarterback, and I do like Matt Campbell.
I hate Matt Campbell.
But like I said, I do think UCF's offense transitions so well to the Big 12. That's your dark horse, isn't it?
That's who I have winning the Big 12.
Oh, just outright. Okay.
I think the Gus Malzahn led UCF squad with KJ Jefferson, who transferred from Arkansas. He's got KJ Jefferson, who transferred from Arkansas at UCF now, who's in terms of straight up build, Cam Newton-esque, who obviously we know was fantastic at Auburn. That was pre Gus Malzahn at Auburn, but Gus Malzahn had that other quarterback, I forget his name. He was a similar build to Cam Newton, and loved to just chuck the ball.
Oh, Nick Marshall.
Nick Marshall. Thank you. Nick Marshall. They were solid last year, getting a quarterback like KJ Jefferson in, who at Arkansas made Arkansas look better than they probably should have for a year or two.
Not last year.
Well, at some point you can't carry him for 3 years, but that his first year there, Arkansas looked fantastic. His second year there looked okay. In his third year, there was many times where you'd see him running around in the backfield for 10 seconds trying to get sacked. But I have UCF winning it all, winning the Big 12, winning all of the Big 12. I think my dark horse. I don't even think they're a dark horse, because I'm pretty sure they're borderline top 25.
Kansas State.
No, Kansas.
Oh, I think Kansas is top 20, actually.
Are they really a top 20 team?
I think Kansas State is like 25 or 26.
I guess they're not much of a dark horse, but I'll say I think they'll probably win 9 games this year. 8 or 9 games. Just
I
because
mean, they've had a hell of a turnaround the last couple of years, and it's nice to see a school like that who's predominantly a basketball school.
yeah, get it together and to be able to keep their head coach, fantastic.
So since you're back and you heard me talking, but you were probably trying to interject, but no one could hear you. What are your thoughts, and how do you see Utah being with Cam Rising coming back?
I think it's ridiculous that he's playing his 20th year in college football. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's a 46-year-old college kid.
Honestly, it's crazy. But the team is fantastic. Dillingham is a fantastic head coach. I mean, they're just going to be great defensively. They're going to be great offensively. I do think they'll probably be in the Big Ten championship game along with UCF. It'll
I mean, Big 12.
Big 12, my bad. Big 12 championship game along with UCF. And as much as I love Oklahoma State, and every year, pretty much, I praise them and what they are. What Mike Gundy has been known for, which is explosive offense and really solid defense. He has
And the
had
hair.
neither. He had neither of last year, and I don't think he's going to go from having neither to once again having both, in at least in 1 year. So as much as I love them and I will root for them, I just don't see it happening. I think Utah will be there. I think since UCF will be there. I think Colorado, because they're going to be in a weaker conference, will pull out with like a 7-win season, probably. And I mean, Kansas is going to be right up there. I know that for a fact. Kansas State will be right up there. I think TCU, they had their moment 2 years ago. I think they're going to go back to mediocrity. I just think in general, it's like the Big 12 is pretty much going to be what the Big 12 was, but instead of it being Texas and Oklahoma who dominate the Big 12 for a long stretch, it's going to be Utah and probably Oklahoma State or Colorado, depending on how long they stay in the Big 12, and depending on how long Deion stays there, and depending on if he can continue to bring in good talent. I mean, it's going to be TCU, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas Tech. They're all going to be like in their ebbs and flows of having really good seasons and falling off. But it's always going to be those top two teams. That's just the way that conference is always going to be in my opinion.
I might be wrong. Houston's in the Big 12, correct?
Yes.
I would not rule them out as far as down the road being a team that we could see constantly running for that Big 12 championship, because I'm pretty sure their coach is the former West Virginia coach from back in the day.
Oh, speaking of, West Virginia might be pretty solid next year. I think you have a strong consideration as a 9 or 10 win team. That's who I'll have as my dark horse, because they're not screw Kansas. Kansas, I think they're already good. They're gonna be good. West Virginia, I don't think they're in the top 25. I don't think they're really in the conversations for the top 25 yet, but I think they'll be a top 20 team by the end of the year.
Nothing will compare to the Pat White days of West Virginia.
Pat White was just different, man. They finished like number 2 at the end of the year that year. They didn't play in the national championship. I think they played in the
and good old Pat McAfee.
I think they played in the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma and just thrashed them.
So we've talked about the Big 10.
Yes, we have.
Talked about the Big 12.
Yes, we have.
Without being biased, just because you are a Big 10 person, just because of Penn State, which conference do you think is going to have the most turmoil and chaos in the first season with new teams?
That is very difficult. I think that's tough. I think the SEC will, and it's not just because of the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, but because also Alabama is entering a new era. Tennessee has finally gotten their shit together. Ole Miss looks like they'll be poised for a top 12 finish. And you look at Florida, who may get it together. This is like the last year for them to get it together before I think their head coach gets fired. I never liked him in the first place, but I never want anyone to get fired, so hopefully he gets his stuff together. And, you know, it's LSU, Brian Kelly. He's still trying to send a message that he can win a national championship. There's a lot of good teams in there, and there's a lot of teams who usually would dominate, like Bama and Florida, who
Yeah.
are right now trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. And it makes everything a lot more open. And Oklahoma is trying. They're in what, year 3, year 2 or 3? No, year 2
With
of
the
the new
SEC.
era of their head coach,
Oh yeah, this will be year. No, this will be
Brent
year
Venables.
3,
Year 3 with Brent Venables,
and he
who I
just signed that
also,
extension for 6. But
which I think
no,
is
like
crazy, but I understand.
I just think at some point, because I know we all talked about this when Alec used to come on here, that we think it's just going to come down to just 2 big conferences that are in college football. It's pretty much just going to be your Big Ten conference and then your SEC.
Yeah.
And then that's it. They're just going to deviate among those teams. I think it's going to be exciting. I think this is probably the most excited I have been for a college football season, just because of all the different teams and the new conferences now. I want to see how that goes. Also, now the 12-team playoff is exciting, kind of getting that March Madness feel to college football now, which is huge.
Yeah.
No, I think it's going to be a great year. I think the Big Ten conference interests me more than just the Big 12, just because of those West Coast teams. Because I mean, they're so used to that California weather, and now you're about to bring them in the Midwest in December when it's 10 degrees and wind chill of -20. Don't know how that's going to work. It's going to be great. I love seeing it because I like seeing prima donnas try to endure that type of climate and weather condition. But before we wrap up, I know you wanted to talk about the game that comes out next month, July 19th. For those who did not pre-order to get the 3 days early access on July 16th, but I know you wanted to talk about College Football 25.
Yes. This week, they released quite a bit of information about the game. Obviously, Brandon, you kept me in the loop. But the one thing I wanted to talk about was the top 10 stadiums or top 10 atmospheres that they released. Because I personally have issues with it. I don't know if you do, but before we get into it, I just want to list all the teams in order from 1 to 10 so that the people listening know what we're talking about. At number 1, Kyle Field for Texas A&M. 2, Bryant-Denny for Alabama. 3, Tiger Stadium for LSU. 4, Ohio Stadium for Ohio State. 5, Sanford Stadium, Georgia. 6, Beaver Stadium, Penn State. 7, Camp Randall for Wisconsin. 8, Oklahoma Memorial for Oklahoma. 9, Doak Campbell for Florida State. 10, Ben Hill Griffin for Florida.
All right, so I agree with. I can probably honestly count on 3 fingers of what I agree with in that top 10. I agree with LSU's spot. I believe they are a top 5 destination for the toughest places to play. Penn State definitely is a top 10 toughest place to play. When you have the whiteout and they're yelling Mo Bamba at night, just like the video, man. Michigan had a false start. They couldn't get anything. I mean, that's an atmosphere I would love to go to, especially a night game. Then the other one, honestly, I do agree with is the Georgia one, just because that has always just been a crazy environment and a tough place, even for bigger teams like Alabama to go to. I mean, when you turn that TV on and it's a noon kickoff, even at noon, that stadium is rocking for Georgia home games. The biggest one that I have an issue, or 2, I should say, honestly, is your number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. A&M 12th man. It's crazy. It's always been labeled as a crazy environment just because of how big the stadium is. 12th man is all their fans. What has A&M done in the past couple years to even make it seem like they are number 1 toughest place to play? I mean, they haven't done anything. They've always had lackluster seasons. They looked terrible. Jimbo Fisher didn't do anything while he was there. Well, I shouldn't say didn't do anything, but later in his years, he didn't really do anything with A&M. Alabama's not a tough place to play. I don't know how many times they've gotten beat at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, I don't think it's for Bama. Like, obviously, Bryant-Denny is a good it's a good stadium. It's a good atmosphere. but it's amplified by the fact that they were just so good as a team. Not necessarily the atmosphere is fantastic. Like I think Tiger Stadium is better than Kyle Field and Bryant Denny. I would say Ohio State is better than Kyle Field, Bryant Denny.
Yeah.
I would say Beaver Stadium is better than Kyle Field, Bryant Denny. I would say Doak Campbell is most certainly better than those two. Oklahoma Memorial, most certainly better. And I think not having the big house in the top 10, in my opinion, ridiculous. I think not having um, a Neyland Stadium for Tennessee, ridiculous. I mean,
What number was Ohio State?
Ohio State came in at number 4.
Yeah, they should be at 10 or below 10.
Yeah.
Like they're I don't even think they are a top 10 toughest place to play.
No. You're gonna, because one of the criteria was like historic winning percentage at home, like recent success at home, and then like general atmosphere and loudness. And obviously Ohio Stadium gets loud. The Horseshoe gets loud.
Yeah.
It is most certainly a tough place to play. But Michigan has gone in there and beat them in the past 2 years. Ohio State hasn't beaten Michigan at Michigan in the past 2 years. I mean, I just think having Ohio State at 4 and then not having the big house anywhere in the top 10 is crazy. And as much as I love the Wisconsin atmosphere and Camp Randall, I haven't been to Camp Randall, but I did get to go to the Notre Dame Wisconsin game that was in Chicago, and half the stadium was Wisconsin fans, and they did the jump around. Cool atmosphere, love it. A top 10 toughest place to play in the nation. They're not even the number 1 toughest place to play in the Big Ten West. I would argue Kinnick Stadium for Iowa is.
Yep. It's my only argument against the whole this whole rating thing for the football game. It's a video game. It's the first time the ratings are coming out. It is what it is. I think more people are just excited that we're finally getting a college football video game back after so many years of people who have just held on to PS3s, Xbox 360 just to play NCAA football 14. Like I said, I don't think, and I know you and I have talked about college football before the season start. We always talk about what we're excited for and whatnot, but I don't think that we have ever been this filled with joy about an upcoming college football season.
No. And that's just one of those things that having a college football video game brings.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, I didn't play 14 until probably 2012, but what I did play was NCAA 06. Every time it turns fall in this area, the leaves are changing. I have to play that game or listen to the soundtrack from that game because it exemplifies fall and college football for me. 14 does the same thing for many other people. It just empowers what is already a powerful sport to a different extent because you're that more a part of it than you were before. It's fantastic. It can connect you with teams who you would have never cared about if you didn't have that game. I mean, I have small fandoms for different schools like Oklahoma State and Southern Miss and Kansas, and I enjoy Tennessee because of different rebuilds I've done within college football games or different Road to Glories I've done or players that I've played against in those games that are just crazy.
No, it's just one of those things where it's one of those games that kind of just brings everybody together just because of what it has meant for so many people for so long in the past. But it's super exciting. Week 0 for college football is August 31st, the last weekend in August. Notre Dame heads down to Kyle Field, apparently the number 1 ranked toughest place to play. We'll see how that goes, but we'll dive into more into game schedules. But on Monday, we will be going over SEC ACC. Very interesting SEC and how they're doing the conference realignment now for this year. But got some more stuff to talk about. Kellen, it's been too fucking long. We're back. We're back here on Friday, and we'll be back on Monday. And that will be our schedule from here on out. It will be every Friday and Monday. When the season starts on Fridays, we will give you previews of upcoming matchups on that Saturday. And then Monday will be just kind of recaps from the weekend. I look forward to it, man. It's going to be nice. Kellen, you will be heading off back to Ball State, chirp, chirp, here in a couple months. Still going to keep the show going, but We're back. We are back.
Absolutely back, and I couldn't be happier.
It's going to be great. But hey, make sure you give us a follow on Instagram, Sharpe Sports Report, and give us a follow on YouTube. And let me just say, just from YouTube, the one video I posted about a Notre Dame entrance song, we have gotten over 21,000 views on that video, over 100 and something comments. There's more content coming.
There's a lot more content coming. That's the
We
game
appreciate
plan.
you. We appreciate you guys. You guys enjoy your weekend. Watch some soccer this weekend.
Watch some soccer. Do it.
There's
The Euros
some
are on. Copa America is
Euros.
on.
Oh, God. Let's not get started with Copa. U.S.
No.
was a disappointment last night,
Yes.
but it doesn't help when Uruguay just puts up 6 goals the other night, pretty much. Was it 4-0?
It was 5-0.
5-0. It doesn't
And
matter. It's ridiculous.
all we can hope is, from a U.S. standpoint, is that they take it easy on us on Monday. And before we leave, we always want to talk about what you want to listen about. So if you're sitting there as a fan of TCU football, as a fan of Eastern Michigan football, and you want us to talk about something or look into something, let us know. We will be more than happy to do it because, frankly, we need ideas constantly, and we would love to do it.
We look forward to talking to you guys again on Monday. Like I said, have a great weekend. 4th of July is next weekend. It's going to be great. Great time of year here in the U.S. of A. Like I said, Euros, Copa America. Let's go USA. We have to win this next one in order to get out of group stage and into the quarters. Other than that, Kellen, it's great to be back, my man.
It's fantastic to be back.
We are 2 months from college football.
Yes, we are.
All right, sayonara. Oh.